gives people confidence. And back in the day, it was a lot harder to get that kind of stuff done, right? The barrier to entry for this is so easy, especially if you're working with a doctor like myself. Like, we're doing this stuff all the time for people. It's kind of like the new normal.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, we are in the month of September and we got Labor Day behind us. I don't know how it is already the fall, but I'm excited. I'm excited to dial it in. I'm excited for our guest today. I got a special guest. I got someone who specializes in hormone and testosterone treatment and helping men increase and boost their testosterone levels. I got Dr. Adam Silberman. Dr. Adam, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on. We first connected through one of our investors, Greg Wilson, who invests in our fund. And Greg and I were working out a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned your name and mentioned that he sees you. And I said, dude, let's bring him on the podcast. I'd love to talk about this stuff. It's something that I'm actually going to get my blood work done here soon, next couple weeks, and hopefully get on some testosterone myself. But yeah, man, appreciate you coming down.
100%. Yeah. Happy to be here and share the knowledge, with your community about the importance of hormone optimization in men and women, and what we can do now to prevent things from getting worse as we get older.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into it. I know for many years, testosterone use and steroid use were frowned upon by the general public, looked down upon, and I think not monitored could be a dangerous thing, right? But I feel like over the last few years, especially the last couple of years, it's become a very trendy thing. And I feel like a lot of men that are 40 and over that look good physically are on testosterone. So what really changed there from the perception, 10, 15 years ago as a dangerous thing to now the last 3 years or so, it's become a lot more socially acceptable?
Yeah, we've got a few things that have happened over the years. Most notably, we're now seeing what are called longitudinal trials coming on board. These are academic trials looking at large cohorts of people and evaluating them over an extended period of time to see what happens when someone's been using testosterone times 15 years, times 20 years, times 25 years. And it's interesting because what we're actually seeing is a reduction in all-cause mortality, meaning like death of any reason. We're seeing a reduction in incidences of cardiovascular disease. So that could be a heart attack or a stroke. We're seeing extended periods of improved cognitive function as you age, brain's working better into later years of life. So I think that the general community, right, is getting hold of this literature and they're reading it for themselves. And they are actually going to their doctors and saying, hey, look, I'm reading these things. I want to get into this. Would you be willing to look at my levels? Would you be willing to talk to me about this?
Yeah. So what exactly is testosterone?
Yeah. So testosterone is a hormone. In men, it's produced in your testicles, and it's a androgen. So it's responsible for growth and development. So you can think about it as like the nitrox for your fuel, right? It's high performance, high octane engine oil. It does everything from stimulates your body to make and maintain muscle mass, to activates specific neurotransmitters in your brain, like affects serotonin and dopamine, so it can give you an improved sense of mood, an increased level of focus, and it plays around with the cardiovascular activity in your heart, so it can expand or contract blood vessels and upregulate sort of the clearance of problematic things within your blood. Kind of
Yeah, for sure. For me, I would say, I'm 39 now, and I'm for the most part relatively healthy. I work out. I'm pretty active, and my energy levels are pretty good. Now, I will say I went through a stretch for the first time in my life. I did 76 days sober. This is in the spring leading up to this summer. And I would say during those 76 days, man, I worked out a ton. And my energy levels had never been that high. I felt great, felt amazing, reinvented myself in many ways, business, physical, friendship, leadership, everything became better. And then I went back into drinking for July and August. And today's day 2. I'm starting a new stretch to where there's basically another season of me being sober. I'm going to do at least another 75 days. Maybe I'll do more. But one thing I did notice going back to drinking for those 2 months is my workouts were not as good. and my energy levels completely diminished, right? And so, with testosterone and that sort of thing, I know it helps with the energy levels. So I'm excited to get my blood work done here in a couple weeks. Hopefully, do it with you and yourself and get on some sort of testosterone. I don't know where my levels are. Never been tested naturally, but I've always been a guy that has had to work extra hard in the gym in order to build lean muscle. So I'm interested to see kind of where I am. What are some of the side effects of folks that do have low T?
Yeah, well, the other thing that is interesting about why testosterone replacement is becoming more popular in the community is that we're seeing a decline in testosterone levels at a rate like we've never seen before. So, year on year, a 30-year-old man's average testosterone level has declined. So that average in the 1970s was higher than the 80s, than the 90s, than 2000s, and today. I'd be interested to see what your levels are too.
Mm,
There's a number of reasons why we think that testosterone levels are declining as we age. As we move into, current date. One of the prevailing thoughts is that we're exposed in our environment to a wide array of environmental triggers that impact our own ability to make testosterone. That could be, exposure to certain types of plastics on a day-to-day basis that can then impact our body's own ability to make testosterone. It could also be what we do on a day-to-day basis that would stimulate our own body's testosterone levels that we're not doing anymore culturally, right? We're sitting a lot more for our work. We're not doing a lot of physical activity, a lot less than we were. Even in our home responsibilities, right? We're kind of offloading a fair amount of that. So when we think about a guy who could have low testosterone, part of it's exactly what you said. Like, it could be this general feeling of like, hey, look, like I should be seeing a different level of result for the output that I'm putting into this. And that could be in the gym in terms of performance. Right? It could be in your profession in terms of output, stamina, right? And as well as work satisfaction. So whatever it is with your output, right? If you're having a decreased level of work satisfaction with your personal life, desire for more, right? Like, the typical guy that would come in with suboptimal testosterone is kind of telling me like, look, man, like I should be happier than I am. Like I should be getting more excited about the things that I'm doing than I am because I'm doing awesome stuff, but I'm not feeling it in the way that I used to or in the way that I feel like I should. I know that's kind of a
yeah,
general
give me an example
thing.
of that.
Yeah, like, a lot of times, men tie a lot of self-worth into what they do professionally, which is killer. And they'll notice that like maybe they close a deal, right? Finish a project, right? Maybe it could even been years in development, right? It should feel like a monumentous occasion. They should feel proud of what they've accomplished. They should be proud of themselves, right? And the impact they made. And they don't feel it. They're just like, okay, like, all right, that happened. They go home, right? Maybe they start to have some drinks or start to use other substances to try to elicit that feeling of satisfaction, of ease, of joy, right? And they start to look for it from external sources. So many times we'll see guys start to use, food, caffeine, alcohol, other types of substances to kind of like fill that space
Mm,
of satisfaction. Yeah. And that's kind of like what many of the guys come to me with when they're like, look, man, just something isn't right anymore.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense when you mentioned the testosterone levels have decreased with these generations over time. I mean, if you go back to the ancestral period, men had to go hunt and provide food for the families. And if they didn't go out there and hunt, like they weren't going to eat, right? And their families would die off, and it was survival of the fittest. And so it makes sense that, back then, and a lot more manual labor jobs back then in the workforce versus today. I mean, even for myself included. I'm in the office and I'm sitting down here right now having a conversation with you, but it's not manual labor. And so if I didn't go to the gym, if I didn't lift weights, I would completely miss out on that, testosterone boost, if you would. But I'm curious for you, out of all these things that you mentioned, what are like the top 3 or 4 things that a guy could do? Maybe they're doing right now, but they don't even realize it, that is diminishing their T levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity to talk about what could be diminishing
Yeah,
testosterone and then what people could do in their day-to-day life to kind of
sure.
optimize their testosterone
Because
too,
I
right?
can imagine alcohol is one, right? Does not help your T
Dude,
levels.
alcohol does not help T levels. Alcohol, unfortunately, like
It
in
doesn't help.
most
It doesn't help a
people,
lot of
it
things.
does not help a lot of things.
Yeah.
And, it's exciting because it kind of feels like this to me, and you might be able to attest to this because you're in the space too. But it seems to me like now more than ever in social settings, there are alternatives to alcohol that are available for people to engage in to still feel like they're part of the community. They're having that social experience. They're engaging in, and it seems like people have more of an opportunity now than ever to kind of like link into that
Such as what?
kind of like fancy non-alcoholic beverages, like certain types of non-alcoholic kombuchas or sparkling waters, or even things like like these CBD drinks where you can get a bit of a head change, which is what people do like about alcohol. Or like these I don't know much about it, but I know that there's been some like low dose kratom type of drinks or these kind of alternatives, microdose
Yeah,
of
microdosing.
mushroom drinks
Sure.
or alternatives
To
that are
alcohol.
being presented to alcohol that people can use in social settings to kind of get that feeling of connection, enjoyment, that release, right? But yeah, alcohol specifically, like it kills your sleep. Like we know it. Anyone that tracks their sleep with something like an Oura Ring, a Whoop, your Apple Watch, like you'll see, even with a drink, at 5 in the afternoon, like if you're on it, you'll notice that your heart rate is a little bit higher at night. And your body's having to work a little bit harder to recover, right? We track this metric called heart rate variability to give us an understanding of how well you're recovering from your day's activity, training, work, mental, emotional stress, all of it, right? And we know that that heart rate variability gets worse when you sleep, even with like one alcoholic beverage a night. So like, look, I'm not saying that everyone should abstain from alcohol all the time. Like, I understand that that's not realistic. And there are a lot of intrinsic perceived benefits that people have when they consume alcohol together culturally. And like, I mean, I understand that. And look, you got to know that like your sleep is being impacted. Therefore, your recovery is being impacted. And that's going to like lower your capacity to gain muscle mass, to train hard, to perform cognitively at your best. And it's gonna keep you from really shining, the best you can.
One thing I noticed when I didn't drink for the 76 days was I actually enjoyed just having sparkling water and lime and being around folks in a social setting. Now I'm very comfortable being sober, right? In a social setting. I'm pretty loose sober. But one thing I did notice was just like being sober for, after 30 days, 30 to 60 days, I started to feel like a natural high just from all my production levels and just a natural high that I'd never experienced before. And I remember thinking, this natural high is better than any high I've ever experienced on substances or alcohol ever in my life. And I thought, man, this is really cool. And so when I went back to drinking for 2 months, it was fun. I think it's important to let loose every now and then, enjoy it. But man, like I said at the top of the show, my energy levels were, wow, I never experienced my energy levels that low. And I think it was because I got used to what it was like energy level wise to be sober for 76 days. I'm sure my T levels went up. And once I got used to that, I was like, whoa, I can't believe I was operating like this before, right? And that's why now I'm back on it. I'm going to do another season. I'm going to dial it again. I'm going to reinvent myself. There was not one bad thing that happened of me being sober for 76 days. I couldn't mention one bad thing. And, I believe that we're either growing or we're dying. I don't feel like anyone stays the same. So as much as someone might say, hey, I'm going to, take my foot off the gas pedal for a month or two, I'm just going to flatline and stay the same. That's just not the case, And so excited to get back to it. And, a couple weeks in, let's do some blood work. I want to see where they are. Obviously, I'm sure they were much higher after the 76 days than they are today, right? But a couple weeks, I want to go see where I'm at. So what are some normal ranges for, maybe a man or a guy listening to this podcast right now? What are some normal ranges that they should be in?
Yeah. So when we look at testosterone, we always want to look at total testosterone, free testosterone, a lab called sex hormone binding globulin. It's usually abbreviated as SHBG.
Okay.
And we also look at another hormone called estrogen, estradiol. So by looking at total testosterone, free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, and estradiol, we can get a pretty good idea of what's going on specifically with your testosterone production. There's more to it, but that's a really good hit. And then it's okay, well, what levels are we going to be looking for, right? Like you typically want to be within the upper 10 to 20% of the reference range on lab work. Now, what's really interesting about reference ranges, most people don't know how reference ranges on labs are actually created. Do you?
No, I do not.
Yeah. So the reference range on that lab work, the thing that shows up right just next to the report, right, of your level is established based on an average of every single lab that has been taken from every single person, regardless of their health status. So they take all the numbers and then they do a standard deviation from the mean, and that's what you get. So most people look at those lab value reference ranges and they think, oh, if I'm within the ranges, then I'm all good, right? But it's not necessarily the case. I mean, this is an average of people that are coming in to emergency rooms, that they've got diabetes, they've got hypertension, they're obese, autoimmune disease, right? It's a full spectrum. So we try to target in on functionally optimal ranges when we look. So for a guy's total testosterone, right, we want you to kind of be in the upper quartile. So there was a meta-analysis that was done a few years back that looked at heart disease risk and testosterone levels in men. And it kind of drew this baseline that like, if you're over 650 in total testosterone level, like you're doing a pretty good job. You're going to have a significantly reduced risk of having a heart attack or a stroke if you keep your levels above that time, right? Now, like in my clinical practice, I see a lot of guys in our age range, right? 30s to 40s. And I'll tell you right now, like the majority of the guys that I'm testing are like below that number. They're in the 500s, they're in the 400s. They're high performers. They're running on full steam, and their hormones just basically are not keeping up. There's a lot we can do to try to optimize that even before we start something or consider something like testosterone.
So most men that are in their 40s and 50s, not on any testosterone boosting supplements at all, what's considered normal for them?
Yeah.
What's the range?
Look, I think that every man should be above 650, like period, full stop.
That's considered optimal.
To me, that's considered baseline. That's like, for me, that's the low end range of normal.
Okay.
Now, that's pretty controversial, I think, especially because if you look at averages of what would be considered normal testosterone as we age, right, it declines, and these averages go well below that number. And, are people dropping off like flies? No. However, I am confident that to perform at your best, you've got to stay above 650, ideally up into the 800s. Is going to be where we're trying to target you. That's where clinically I see men performing at their peak, right? And we have confidence knowing that there is not an increased risk of disease, of stroke, of heart attack like we previously thought with maintaining a man's testosterone within those ranges. In fact, the opposite might actually be true. We might actually be seeing a net benefit in a reduction of your risk for those things happening. Like it's kind of we're in like kind of like a full 180.
So I've heard folks throw out a range of like, hey, normal is anywhere from 400 to like 800 or 900. But you're saying anything below 650, you are not operating at the performance that you should be as a guy.
Yeah, you might come to me and being like, hey, doc, like I feel pretty good. Like, like my quality of life is decent. I'm doing okay in the gym. I'm cruising.
And you're like, it could be better though.
But it could be better.
Yeah,
exactly. And there's no harm in trying, be it with lifestyle changes, right? Nutrition, lifestyle modification, sleep hygiene, food intake, protein intake, to try to get your numbers up, changing your training programming, and see how you feel, see how you go. There's a lot of ways to boost your own testosterone naturally, without the use of testosterone.
What are some of those ways?
So we have foundation, what are called foundation of health principles that we know work positively toward optimizing a man's testosterone. And in my clinical practice, those are kind of like the non-negotiables, right? Like that's where optimizing your strength training program, right? For example, we know that if you lift heavy things in the gym, you're going to be stimulating your body to make more testosterone. Now, interestingly, right, to your point, when you have a little bit of testosterone in you and you're going to see better gains in the gym as a result. But we've got to start doing strength training as part of every man's program. Like, it just has the most profound benefits, not only on your physique, but on all cause mortality and your performance mentally, emotionally, and professionally.
Yeah, people are like, "Oh, like go do cardio, go run on a, go do a bike." I'm like, and they have all these like spin classes and all this stuff, and I'm like, it's probably one of the biggest misconceptions out there. I'm like, no, like lift heavy weights, eat a high protein diet, and you will shred fat if you do that. And you're really killing two birds with one stone, right? You're working on your physique, and then in addition to that, you're burning fat as well. I used to run, and I stopped running maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And now I just lift heavy weights. I walk. I try to walk 4 miles a day. And I do a little bit of hiking as well. But I don't do the high impact stuff anymore. I grew up skateboarding. I grew up playing basketball. I put a lot of wear and tear on my body back then. When I see runners now that are, in their 50s and 60s, they've been running their whole lives. They're like limping around. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to be 55 years old limping around like that. And so I stopped 4 or 5 years ago. And man, my body has never felt stronger at age 39. I've never felt healthier, never felt better. I don't have any aches or pains. All I do now is I just lift heavy weights and eat like a high protein diet and do a little bit of walking and hiking.
Yeah, and when you go hiking, do you feel like you're adequately enabled to do a few miles, in the mountains? You're going up and down, you're getting some altitude, like,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, 100%, right?
I get my heart rate up.
Correct.
Sometimes it's hard to breathe when I'm doing that, but get a little cardio there, burning calories, but it's low impact. And I think that's the key. It's like, it's good on your joints and all that sort of thing. I'm like, dude, for me, it's longevity. And also when you do cardio and you run, you exhaust yourself. You do not have the strength to go lift anymore after that. But also when you're running and doing this heavy cardio, you're not building any muscle at all. Going to the gym, strength training, you're working on your physique. And ultimately, like, that's what makes you feel good. Your posture, the way you talk to people gives you confidence. The way you fit in clothes, the way you look in the mirror is huge. And in today's age in business and real estate investing and everything, like, first impression is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that guys always tell me is that they notice how their arms fit differently in their sleeves. Because it's something I think that everybody can kind of feel. You feel that thing. Like, you see, you resonate with that, right?
Totally.
It's like, you're like, whoa, like, all right, like, that's on, and it feels good, and that's real. I mean, that's real progress. You're totally right. Like, emphasizing lifting heavy weights is non-negotiable, like, in everyone's life. And there is there's certainly value in training your cardiorespiratory fitness as well. But as you know, right, when you're doing strength training, like, your heart rate is getting up. And like, we don't have to train our cardiorespiratory fitness in a way that accelerates the degeneration of our joints, right? Look, I totally understand that people love running. Like, there are people that are just like, look, doc, I love to run. It's my thing. I'm in the running club.
Oscar's one of them right there.
I love running. Yeah. Like,
and
Oscar
he's
loves
marathons
running
and stuff like that. So I get it. That's different.
Yeah, and it's part of their it's part of who they are, right? But I'll tell you right now, the amount of people in their 50s and 60s that I see that I have to talk them out of running, because if they continue to run at the pace they're running, their arthritis is going to get worse. They're just not going to have a very happy sort of marginal decade of their life. Is huge. I mean, I'm transitioning people into cycling, right? Because you can still get that endorphin hit. You're outside, you're moving, similar to running, right? You can get that from cycling. Cycling's a lot lower impact. But yeah, I love it. There's been a shift to people really thinking about and prioritizing strength training in their lives, and it's extremely valuable. I think where people sometimes get scared is maybe they've never lifted heavy weights before, right? Like, maybe they weren't in high school sports, or maybe they were, but they didn't have a strength and conditioning coach that was focusing on them. And they get up there and they're like, well, what do I do with this? Like, I mean, how do I deadlift this? I don't want to hurt myself, right? So, for those folks, like, I really suggest that they invest in a qualified trainer, even if it's just for a 12-week protocol, right? So that person can help them understand the aspects of strength training and conditioning programming and technique that are going to minimize their likelihood of injury.
Yeah. And for anyone out there listening that's like, can't understand this, and you said it just recently, all I know is this. For me personally, for the time periods that I work out hard, I don't drink, I eat really good. I do that for 3-4 weeks in a row. I feel great. My confidence goes up. The way I fit in clothes feels great. Everything gets better. But if I go through a 3 or 4 week span on the flip side to where I don't work out very well, or maybe I do some light workouts, or maybe I don't lift at all, and I eat bad, I feel like shit. The way I look in the mirror, all that, I lose my confidence. All that is the opposite, right? And so, I don't know, I'm addicted to it. And that's why when I was drinking for a couple months, I'm like, yeah, it was fun. My workouts were compromised. My diet was compromised. And I'm like, dude, like, I got to get, like, it's just killing me.
Look, man, you're a high performer.
Yeah.
And it does not sit well with you in any area of your life when it's functioning at a suboptimal level.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Like 100%. And it's almost like just as much of an opportunity, right, to have that feeling about your own life as it is like a crux. Because like sometimes I'm the same way. Sometimes I think like, okay, like what is gonna actually like satisfy my desire, to create impact in the world? Like at what point am I gonna be like, oh right, cool, like my impact is complete, I did it? I don't think it's about that. I think it's about the journey and the drive. Like I'm never gonna stop working. I'm never gonna stop, doing my part to make sure that those that are in my circle of influence are living their best life, full stop, because that's where my impact gets potentiated to thousands of people. And you're experiencing it, right? Like, what you said about, I looked at myself in the mirror and I just did not feel that energy, right? It's probably because your face looked different,
Everything. Face, body.
Right. And that translates into your day.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us have, these moments of inspiration in the morning. Like, you ever wake up in the morning and you're like, boom, I just had that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just had that thing. Now I know what's got to happen to fix that problem, right? Or whatever it is, right? That stuff diminishes when our physical body isn't optimized, when we're not sleeping well. Those moments of inspiration that come when we're sort of in that space of creativity, it diminishes. So, optimizing a man's hormones, right, or anyone's hormones, man or woman, can have these profound effects that you would never even anticipate.
Hey guys, real quick, the only way the show grows, the only way we continue to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So if you could take 2 seconds or the click of the thumb to review on Apple or Spotify, it will mean the world to me. But more importantly, we'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs and more real estate investors and help them build wealth through this podcast. Now back to the show. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons here of the test. So, I do know this. A lot of my podcast guests that come in, a lot of my friends that I hang out with that look good and they're above the age of 35, 40, almost all of them are on testosterone. It's at some level. And they all tell me like, dude, Rich, like it's a game changer. I don't know why I didn't start it sooner. Like, you don't know what you're missing out on. Like, you just got to do it. And, I think what's held me back to this point was like, maybe I'll have that in the cards when I'm in my 40s. And also, a lot of them told me like, hey, like it's a lifelong decision. Once you go on it, you're not going to want to come off. So what are some of the cons involved? Is it true that if you get on the testosterone, your body is going to produce less natural testosterone?
Yes. So when we give you testosterone, and we can talk later about this too, about there are medications that we have available to us to promote your own testosterone production. And, what's unique about functional medicine physicians like myself is we're trained in kind of blending testosterone and these natural agonists so that we get your levels up without just killing your body's own production, right? But yes, you're right, Rich. Like, the more testosterone we give you, right, the more testosterone is going to be circulating in your body, and your brain is going to then signal to your own producing testicles like, hey, look, we don't need to make anymore. We got enough, right? So we put testosterone in you. It goes up to the brain. It's like, oh, we're good. We're great. So you're not getting that signal nearly as much, right? Those signals are LH and FSH. They come down from the pituitary gland and they stimulate testosterone production and your production of sperm. So one of the things we really want to think about, right? Like when we're optimizing a man's testosterone within your age range is like many of us are still thinking like, oh yeah, like I want to do everything I can to make sure that I'm fit and the best human I can be to create a family, right? Like there are lots of cases when men use testosterone in high doses and then they can still produce children and things like that. But there is certainly a risk where your sperm production will be negatively impacted if we go too hard on the testosterone.
So give me an example of that, because for me, I want to have 4 kids. I'm 39. I haven't quite started yet, but it's definitely in my cards, right? So me starting my testosterone journey now, and then wanting to also have 4 kids in the future, how much of that reproduction will be compromised?
Yeah, why for?
Because I came from a smaller family, so it's just my sister, myself. My sister is much older than me. And so I think because of that, I really want a bigger family, but also like I don't want to grow old and not have kids, or maybe just have 1 kid. Like I feel like I've learned so much in this journey of life, and I want to be able to pass all that information, all that wisdom, all that knowledge that I've learned down to my kids. And also, I want to have a lot of grandkids and all that sort of thing. I feel like that's what kind of keeps us young as we get into our older years.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you starting to think about a family in your 40s, right, means that it is so important for us to pay attention to your heart disease risk, your cognitive performance, because you're going to be seeing the fruits of that labor, right, as a grandpa when you're in your 70s. And we want your 70s to feel like your 50s. We want your 80s to feel like your 50s, right? We want to keep you dialed in. And I'm sure you've seen it. You've seen those people walking around, right? Like in their 70s and they're like fit. You talk to them and they're telling you stuff. They're clued in. Like, we need that to be the norm, not the exception. So yeah, when we think about optimizing your testosterone, right? Like we're going to get a baseline of what your level is, right? And then depending on what your level is, right? If it's in the tank, like if you're in the low hundreds, maybe 200, you might have what's called primary hypogonadism, meaning that your testicles are like not making testosterone for a physiologic reason. And in that case, like we got to use testosterone no matter what. But in the majority of guys, like your body's still able to make testosterone, just not at the level that would be optimal for you to live your best life. So what we do is we think about, okay, since your foundations of health seem to be pretty well established, right? You're eating adequate amounts of protein, you're prioritizing your sleep, you're managing your stress levels, you're training appropriately, right? And you've got good connection to mind, body, spirit, good community, and you're passionate, right? You're kind of doing what's foundationally optimal to dial yourself in, right? So this is a perfect time to check your levels because we can be like, all right, given that your foundations of health are dialed, where are you at? Let's say your levels come back like in the 400s or maybe low 500s, and we want to do some support, right? What I would suggest is that we think about possibly using something that would boost your own testosterone production, right? Through stimulating that agonist effect to stimulate your own testicles to make it, right? And we could see what comes out of that, right? Most of the time, when we get a guy whose levels are like kind of in the suboptimal range, we can give them either an oral medication or an injectable that is not testosterone itself, that gets your levels up pretty quick into the 800s and 900s, and people feel pretty good on it. And in doing so, you're not negatively impacting your sperm quality. You're doing nothing but actually facilitating that action in your body. Many times these medications are actually used in fertility clinics or other spaces when a guy shows up having trouble getting pregnant, right, with their wife, and they do a sperm analysis and it's like, oh, look, like you got low volume, like your swimmers are kind of, messed up. We can give these medications to kind of boost that production.
Got it. So you can take that booster at any time.
Yep.
And you say just take it when you're wanting to reproduce.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suggest that if guys come to me on testosterone therapy in any form and they're like, look, like I'm thinking about, my wife and I are thinking about, taking the next step and having children. Usually to just take out another variable, I'll usually dial them down to a very minimal dose of testosterone or even take them off, keep them on or ramp up their testosterone booster so that their levels stay good, they feel dialed and optimized, and their sperm is ready to go. For the proactive male, we'll run a sperm analysis. We'll have you donate a sample. We'll check it out, and just to make sure that things are good, right? Once again, it's a different way of looking at your health. It's like, look, why wait until you're a year into the process of trying to conceive with your girl before, looking at yourself to see how things are going? Like, it's a relatively simple test. It's very affordable. And then we can kind of know without a doubt that, yep, things are dialed. Gives people confidence. And, back in the day, it was a lot harder to get that kind of stuff done, right? The barrier to entry for this is so easy, especially if you're working with a doctor like myself. Like, we're doing this stuff all the time for people. It's kind of like the new normal.
Now, what about the hair loss? Because I've heard people say that testosterone use can lead to more hair loss. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the dose, right, and the guy's physiology, right, there's a hormone that gets made called dihydrotestosterone, DHT, right? Testosterone in our body gets converted into dihydrotestosterone and also estradiol, right? So whenever we do anything to boost our testosterone levels, be it testosterone replacement or even the foundations of health, right? When those levels go up, we're going to get an increase in estrogen and an increase in dihydrotestosterone. Now, the rates at which those things increase, right, is dependent on a number of different inherited factors and genetics. So when we see guys that are, high producers, high DHT converters, right, we got to be really careful with their dosing strategies because we might see some thinning of the hair. And when we see that, we want to dial in the dose. So it's kind of where, I know there's a lot of ways to get your testosterone if you want it, right? Really, really affordable ways. Clinics, very easy, low friction. Go in. I mean, many of them will just draw your blood right there and just give it to you right away. But there's no monitoring. There's no tracking. When we work together, we're looking at all of that stuff. Like, because for me, like, yeah, your levels have to look good, but really it's the output that we're trying to achieve. That's what we want. We want that. So yeah, you could see changes in hair, as a result of testosterone replacement, and then we make adjustments. And some guys will bring on different types of topicals to kind of combat that if we need to.
Now, how extreme are we talking with the hair loss? Because you're saying that definitely is a downside risk. Are we saying this is very subtle, or this is like, holy cow, like it's coming out quick?
Look, I've seen cases when guys have been megadosed with testosterone and like they're pulling clumps out of their hair and they come and see me. But like usually those guys also have like acne that appears on their chest and their back.
What does that mean when they have acne?
That means that their hormones are just through the roof.
They're too high.
So when your testosterone's too high, your skin's going to get really oily. And when your skin gets really oily, you start to get kind of acne on the chest and on the back. Like you might see guys at the gym that have a bit of acne. Like they're on gear.
They're on gear and probably unmonitored. So their levels could be what, 2000?
Correct. Yeah. And that might actually be they might actually be wanting that
so they can build muscle.
Exactly. For a supraphysiologic goal that they're trying to achieve.
Now, if you're in that 800 to 1000 range, you shouldn't have some of these side effects that you're alluding to, the acne, the back knee, all that sort of thing, and then an extreme hair loss, right?
Correct. Especially if we're monitoring your levels adequately and we're checking things like your estradiol, your dihydrotestosterone, and your sex hormone binding globulin, like I was talking about. Because there are nutritional protocols, there are nutraceuticals, right? Supplementation that we can use to try to adjust those levels to keep you dialed in. There's also medication we can use to keep those levels down. So it's really like, it's kind of like, when you're like, okay, what's the ideal testosterone level for men, right? That's kind of like level one. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, like, but then what we're really wanting to know is, okay, what's the ideal ratio of your testosterone to estrogen? What's the ideal ratio of your testosterone to DHT, of your total testosterone to your free testosterone? That's when we start to see like you going from good to great. And it's also where we see the safety profile increase dramatically. And it's where we see those side effect profiles just plummet. That's where we like sort of see it dialed in. Another thing that can happen to guys, right, with testosterone replacement is they can get what's called gynecomastia.
What's that?
Gynecomastia is where you grow man boobs. It's when additional tissue that's arguably already present underneath in the breast tissue of men starts to engorge, right? And look, that can happen. Um, when people are appropriately monitored and they're appropriately dosed, we very rarely see that occur, right? And that can be a problem. Like that can be permanent. Many times I'll have guys come to my practice with that as a result, and we can do some things to try to, like curb it and minimize it. In many cases, we can actually like kind of reverse it. That may be a controversial thing to say because probably most of your conventional physicians would be like, oh no, once that's there, it's there. Tissue's tissue. It's not true. But it is the case that sometimes guys will need to go in and have that extra tissue surgically removed. And
I always thought that was just a function of being overweight.
um, it's about it comes from your ratios of hormones in your body and what is stimulating what, right? Like all of these hormones, testosterone, estrogen, dihydrotestosterone, we can talk about others. I mean, they're all stimulating change in your body. They're all growing stuff, right? Your thyroid hormone, right? They're either growing neurons, they're growing muscle, they're making sure your bowels are moving appropriately, right? And if their ratios are off, meaning like you might be taking too much or you're not excreting them at an appropriate rate, you're going to get side effects. You're going to get acne, you're going to get backne, you're going to get, hair loss, you're going to have oily skin, testicles are going to shrink, right? Another thing that happens in guys with testosterone replacement, right? Because if you're giving a high dose of testosterone, what aren't you using anymore, right? Your body's not being asked to make anymore. And what does your body do when it's not using something? Shrinks. So, do these things come back? Do they reverse when you dial in the dose? Absolutely. And are there things that we can do to kind of like reverse that if that's happening to you? 100%. For any of your listeners that are experiencing that, like you don't have to have that. It doesn't have to happen.
For sure.
For sure.
So we know that the dangerous way to use testosterone is for the folks that go in the gym and they're taking testosterone under the table, out of their backpacks in the locker room, not monitoring the T levels, not monitored by a doctor. What is the safe and appropriate way to take testosterone? Like when I come to you, get my blood work, we go through it, kind of walk me through step by step what that's going to look like the safe way.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, look, I know you love your trainer or whatever. I know you love your gym buddy, and I know that they trust what they're getting and doing. And I'm sure it's good. I'm sure. But like, for me, anything I'm going to put in my body, I want to know that it's being made in a pharmacy or a compounding pharmacy that is like under, supervision, that is getting audited by regulatory agencies. I want to know that there's a physician that is also holding those people accountable, right, to quality standards. And so that's kind of like my public service announcement on it. Because the reality is it's not that much more expensive to get your hormones monitored through someone like me than it is to get it, from the gym. So yeah, what does it look like for you? We start out with a fasting blood draw for you. So ideally,
what does that mean when you say fasting?
Yeah, that means about 10 to 12 hours of no food.
Got it.
Right. So overnight, right?
Okay.
You have your last meal at 8, 9 p.m. We draw your blood around 8:30, 9 in the morning. For our clients, we send someone to your home. So you basically just wake up in the morning, they're there, they come upstairs, they draw your blood, and they're gone, right? In about 5 to 7 days, we get those lab results back. I run a pretty comprehensive panel on guys because I know that testosterone levels impact things like your cholesterol, blood sugar, other biomarkers. So for guys like you, I run not only your testosterone, but also we look at your thyroid hormone. We look at markers of inflammation in the body. We look at standard blood chemistries like your liver function, your kidney function, right? We want to make sure that there isn't anything going on, it's more dramatic that we need to address before we start something like this. We look at what's called your red blood cell count. Your red blood cell count can go up with testosterone replacement in any form. And we want to stay on top of that. Like if you're someone that runs kind of like in a high normal red blood cell level, we want to be able to monitor that more effectively because look, thick red blood cells means you have thicker blood. Thicker blood is not what you want, right? You don't want that. And there are lots of ways we can sort of address that as we do hormone replacement, right? So we're looking at your red blood cell chemistries. We're looking at your markers of inflammation. We're looking at your testosterone. We're looking at other hormones, right? Like your thyroid hormone. We're looking at some of your stress hormones, like your cortisol. We get some key nutritional biomarkers. We look at your B12. We look at your magnesium, vitamin D. Look at your iron, right? These are kind of like fundamental nutrients that we need to have adequate levels of in our body in order to perform at our best. And like, these are markers that have been linked to the same symptom picture that I was explaining was associated with low testosterone. So like the last thing I want to be doing is dialing in your testosterone when you've got, low iron and you don't got any energy because you're anemic. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants to be in that position. So our initial blood chemistries is like a mix of like screening you to make sure everything in your body is functioning well, right? Identifying key areas of potential nutrient deficiency so that we can optimize, and checking your hormones and markers of inflammation so that when we start, we can track it as you go. So that happens, right? We connect and we have our first consultation and we talk about all of that. We talk about the results. We talk about what it means. And it's different. It's different to your typical doctor conversation because what I'm talking about is your goals. I am a goal-centric, action-oriented provider. So I'm like, all right, what are your goals? Like you'll have written down your goals. And your goals are I'm not gonna be like, your goal is not, I want good testosterone. Your goal is like, I wanna, improve my body composition and performance in the gym. I want to have more stamina for my work responsibilities throughout the day. I want to, I'm concerned that my parent has cognitive decline in their 60s, and I'm noticing that, and I don't want that to happen to me. These are your goals, right? We take that blood work and we align them with your goals and what you're doing on your day-to-day life, right? What doctors you're seeing, what is your sleep patterns, all the foundations that we talked about. We look at your care team, and we do that in the context of these lab values and how they fit with your goals. So testosterone replacement for many men is kind of like a primary treatment modality, but it sits within this whole person assessment. Because when I revisit our treatment with you, like, yeah, I'll get stoked on your levels being dialed in and optimal, right? But if we're not improving on those goals, right? Tracking your perception of how they're going, and there's a lot of ways we can quantitatively track it too. If we're not getting that, then we're missing something. And it's my job to work with you as kind of like your healthcare CEO to dial that in. Maybe that's, maybe that is like, oh yeah, it's time for us to go on another 30-day no alcohol program, right? Or, hey, like I know you're getting enough protein, but kind of looking at it, like, I think we got to change it like this. Let's see how that works. And, oh yeah, Dr. Adam, like it's tough for me to get that program in my life. All right, well, let's get a chef in. Let's get some meal delivery, right? Let's get these things happening. Let's organize your life in a way so that the testosterone replacement can do its best thing, but it's not a crutch. Like, it's not a crutch for you. It is, it highlights. It's a highlighter, not the script. Does that kind of make
Oh, it does make sense
at all? It
does. So should someone, before they come to you and get tested, should they do all these natural things such as go lift weights, clean up the diet, maybe stop drinking for a little bit before they come and get their T levels tested to see what they are?
I always like to see where people are at in their current moment of life, right? Because everyone, I haven't met a single person that would come to me, even the most dialed in, optimally, functioning, neurotically obsessed people, right? They could always do better, right? Particularly in their own headspace. So many times what I find is that if people wait, they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. And the next thing you know, they're in their 40s. They've never had any blood work done. And we've missed a 5-year window of opportunity where we could put in strategies and protocols, right, to get ahead of the game. So I always recommend that people just draw a line, get some lab work done where you're at right now, because like, why not? Like, I'm not going to judge you. I don't want you to judge yourself. Like, it's a data point, and our ability to adjust and shift anything we find is like, it's insane. Like, we can create life-changing transformations. I mean, you saw like, Dana White and working with Gary Brecka, right? Was this crazy moment in sort of like, I think the functional medicine community, because
with the 10X Health.
it kind of brought this concept of what we've been doing. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, right? And it kind of just like brought it into the limelight. Like Gary Brackett did not do something like remarkably novel with Dana White. Like he did the same thing that we're talking about right now. Like, sure, maybe he had like a little red light bed or some of these other things, right? But no, like he focused on Gary's nutrition. He focused on his movement programming. He focused on his sleep. He cut out alcohol. He made him dial back on his stress-inducing work responsibilities. And within like 6 or 8 weeks, he saw this massive transformation. So I guess my point is like, don't be scared. Don't be nervous. Like, just get it done. Guys don't get it done. Guys don't do it. They're like, oh, all right, I'm good enough. I feel good enough, right? I mean, and honestly, like I'm the same. I'm not judging because I did the same thing. Like I'm a doctor, right? Like you think I'd be getting my lab work done every 6 weeks because I can just do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm the same way.
And how, once you get on it, let's say I get on it with you, I'm obviously going to self-administer it. How often should I be getting my lab work done to kind of test where my levels are?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I start working with people, I want to know kind of like every kind of 6-ish weeks, like what's going on. So in the beginning, we're going to get your baseline. We're going to start something. And then in about 6 to 8 weeks,
we'll retest.
We're going to retest and we're going to see what's up. And then if things are going well and we like the labs that we see, we might keep the same protocol. And then in another 6 to 8 weeks, we'll retest. Now, at that second blood draw, if things look really good, everything's kind of dialed in, we can pull back on the frequency of labs. You know, typically guys will get lab work from me every 4 months. Those that are really wanting to dial in, because it's kind of like, I don't know, in your business, do you have like meetings where people come to you and they report on a specific aspect of your business, kind of like as a debrief? You do,
yeah, of course.
Right? Yeah, of course. So it's kind of like when you see someone like me, when we get lab work, it's like a debrief. I'm like, all right, here's your program. Here's how it's working. This is what we're seeing. And can really provide a lot of confidence in people as a reminder that they're doing the best for themselves from a health and longevity standpoint every step of the way. And like, man, like what I've noticed is the longer we go between blood draws, like the easier it is for people to derail. And so if someone's really interested and focused on this as an aspect of their longevity and their core life purpose, right? Like they want this for themselves. Yeah, every 16 weeks or so, for 4 months, 3 times a year, we lock in, we debrief, we make adjustments, and then we recheck. Yeah,
I love it. Well, Dr. Adam, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, man. I'm really excited to connect with you, get my blood work done here in a couple of weeks, and embark on this new journey for myself. So, where can the folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Adam Silberman. New account.
The new IG, man. You got to start posting.
I'm going to start posting. If the next time I'm on this podcast and I don't have, how many posts should I get between now and the next time I'm on the show?
I think a good stretch. So like if you did 2 posts a day.
2 posts a day?
Yeah. For a whole year, you're looking at about 720.
Okay.
Right? So
is that my goal? Is that?
I mean, you're going to give me a good goal with the T, so
yeah.
I'm going to give you a good goal with the posting.
Yeah.
Yeah, branding today is everything. I think building a personal brand is the most valuable asset that you could build for yourself today. I really believe that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's time for me to step up and do that. I've been so busy with clinical work, working with, the special forces, the Olympians, the pro teams, and then, the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I've been flying all over the world. Went to Ghana a few years ago.
I love it,
did
man.
some medical work there. It was really filling my time with that. And at the same time, with 2 kids at home, a wife, my mom lives here in San Diego, 4th generation San Diegan. There's a lot of community here.
Yes.
And I also feel committed to giving back to the community. So it was almost like my plate was like that. However, now I'm making a commitment to myself to do exactly what you said, to build that brand so that I can provide knowledge to those, through that platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just kind of see what, I guess you just sort of see how it grows, right? You sort of see what happens and make adjustments on the fly.
Dude, I started taking the content seriously just over 2 years ago, and I was doing some cool stuff in the real estate investing space. I was buying apartments. I was doing some boutique hotels, and About 2 years ago, I prioritized the content, and it changed my life in so many ways. It made all the other aspects of business, relationships, the ability to hire good team members, all that sort of stuff. It made it so much easier. But yeah, man, let me know if I can do anything to help in any way. But excited to connect here in 2 weeks, and I appreciate you coming on, man. He's Dr. Adam Silberman. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.